Good morning, everybody, and thanks for attending the Data3 Surface Modern Solutions session this morning. I'm joined by the team from Collabtex. We've got Kalo, who's going to lead out with supporting us with the presentation. So today, what we're going to do is just do a quick overview on Data3 and explain who Data3 is quickly, and then get into the content around Surface. So, a little bit of a snapshot of Data3. Those who've worked with us a long time know we're about a $1.6 billion firm. Probably the big thing that we want to leave from this slide is we have these integration centers that are important, where we can hold and image stock, but we also have a large professional and managed services team, as well as our software licensing. So we really can combine the device, the license, and our services to provide that total solution. In terms of our locations, we've actually got warehouses on the eastern seaboard of Australia, and that's important because that allows us to forward order stock and hold on behalf of customers, which can smooth out supply chain issues. And we know there's some constraints going on with chipset shortages. So try to say it too quickly, but yeah. So having the warehouses and the integration capability is really important as well. At a solutions level, we actually have a quite broader range of solutions. We have cloud, modern workplace solutions. We have very large security practice, and emerging capabilities like data and analytics, and also our connectivity practice. And we land that in our project solutions at the bottom across consulting, procurement solutions, project services, managed services, and also augmentation and resourcing. As a Microsoft partner, we've been a partner with Microsoft for a long time now, since 2001. We're their largest partner in Australia across the three clouds, which is Azure, M365, and Dynamics. We feature around the top 10 partners worldwide with Microsoft, and we're an expert MSP, so we've just been through a rigorous audit to become an Azure expert MSP. We're also a gold partner in 14 competencies, and so there's a lot of capability there across our services, our licensing, as well as our devices business as well. And we have a large number of certified staff that actually deliver our solutions on behalf of our customers as well. There's a little snapshot there just to show those competencies in detail, and obviously pertinent to this presentation today really is about Windows and devices. So we're a gold partner in that competency as well. And in terms of the clouds, how we line up as a partner across the three clouds, but also the device. So we're obviously a partner with Microsoft and Azure and an expert MSP. We do have a Dynamics CRM capability within Data3, as well as what we're known for about our Microsoft 365 solutions. We're a partner in those, and also a fast track ready partner for Microsoft 365, but importantly also a Surface partner with Microsoft across education, across hub and device itself. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Kalo, who's going to pick up the agenda from here and present the next part of the presentation. Kalo, over to you.
Thanks, Scott. And look, guys, I'm just going to appear here and say good morning. I'm Kalo from Collabtex. I'm a Microsoft expert trainer, and I'll be presenting part of today's session. Co-presenting with me is my colleague Daniel. I'll get him to say a quick hello, but we'll probably just keep video on me for now.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks for jumping on. I'm really looking forward to showing you some really interesting stuff that Microsoft's doing. Yeah, I work alongside Kalo virtually, as he's in Taiwan and I'm on the Gold Coast, but it doesn't slow us down. So yeah, thanks for jumping on. As Kalo's chatting, I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A. Kalo and I love as many questions as we can get. The more interactivity, the better it is for both of us. So if you've got a question at all, please pop it down in the chat and we will do our best to answer it as soon as we can.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, guys. So look, quick overview of today's agenda before we jump in. We're going to have a quick look at the modern workplace as it is currently. I'll lean over here so my hand doesn't disappear. Quick look at the modern workplace as it is now. We're going to highlight some of the Surface family and some of the new devices that have come out. I know in particular Dan's a bit excited about the Surface Pro 7 Plus and the 85-inch Surface Hub, which is just launched. I'm going to look at Teams because we really do feel like Teams is the glue that holds this new modern workplace together, especially with the distributed workforces we're all engaged in right now. And then we're going to get into, I guess, the meat and potatoes of the course, which is around modern management and zero-touch deployment. This is where we're going to talk about the technologies that Microsoft has for cloud management of devices, which is just really relevant right now. We're going to have a nice overview of security. And we'll touch on security through the whole presentation as well, because it's such an important and foundational part of Microsoft's technology stack. And then we'll have a bit of a wrap up and Q&A. Although, as Dan said, we're happy to take questions as we go. So yeah, without further ado, we'll kick off. So the way we work has changed. I think that's a very obvious statement. We've all lived through one of the craziest sort of year and a halves of any of our lives, I think. But a lot of these changes were happening before that. IT environments are getting more complex. They've been getting more complex for a long time, and there's a lot of reasons for that, particularly around the number of devices we have and the number of networks we have. Previously, we had a lockdown number of devices connecting from a fenced-off lockdown network, and it was easy to control things. That's just not the case anymore. We need to provision, manage, and deploy devices no matter where they are and no matter what sort of devices they are. We're under more pressure to perform at a higher level. We're under more pressure to do things more cost effectively, and we're expected to be as secure as we were while delivering faster results in a more complex environment, which can be quite difficult. That's why we work with partners like Data3 who can help us do these things more effectively. I think the key data point from this slide, and I'll just lean over so you can see it, is that 74% of companies plan to permanently shift more to remote work. This is a stat from pre-COVID. Prior to COVID, 3/4 of companies were already planning on becoming more remote. Obviously, that statistic has only grown and been forced to be a much faster adoption. And some of the tools that we're going to talk about today have enabled it. And they'll enable us to continue to adapt and work more effectively as we move forward in this new normal. Surface devices are uniquely well suited and positioned for this new working environment. There's a few reasons for that, and we're going to touch on those a couple of times throughout the presentation. But I think the ones that I'd like to mention, at least initially, are the natural inputs, the fact that we do have multiple ways to interact with the device, and the fact that they're all high quality and responsive. So everything from touchscreen, which we've become used to with our our consumer devices, like smartphones, tablets, etc. Surface devices have that same functionality and reaction speed where it just feels natural to touch the device. It feels natural to use a pen if we need to. We have natural voice, natural video, all that sort of thing just gives us a portal into our remote collaboration world that's high quality and feels natural. It removes a lot of these things are things you don't notice, but they remove the difficulty of working through some of these strange environments or these remote environments. So one of the key reasons when people ask why Surface is because Surface is built from the ground up with M365 and the Microsoft stack in mind, okay? When surfaces are designed, the first thing they think about is the places they're going to be used, and then they think about how is this going to work with the existing Microsoft technology stack, which is really important because what happens is that we get natural inputs, we get from the ground up environments, and we already have a lot of the tools we want to use preloaded and pre-built into the Surface, and we'll talk about why that's important a bit later. Some really key things about Surface that matter from a business perspective is Windows 10 Pro. It comes as a default on Surface for Business as opposed to Surface consumer devices which come with Windows 10 Home. Win 10 Pro is absolutely vital to everything we're going to talk about today. You can't use any of these enterprise management tools unless you have a licensed Win 10 Pro machine, so absolutely vital. Advanced Exchange. If you do happen to purchase a large number of devices, there's always going to be a couple that fail. That's just the reality of the world we live in. Surface have a pretty low failure rate, but you're still going to get a few. With that said, Advanced Exchange means you've got peace of mind. I know Daniel and I have had to do it on occasion. We have a lot of Surface devices and occasionally we will have to exchange one. You call Microsoft, you let them know, hey, this is not behaving as it wants. Microsoft will pick it up that day or send you a courier sticker to get it picked up. The device will get picked up and exchanged for a brand new one without you having to worry about it. It just gives you that peace of mind. Commercial configurations. So what this means is that we have more powerful devices with more powerful configurations when we go Surface for Business. Better chipsets, better processors, better graphics cards, all that sort of business. I'll move out of the way here like this. Environmental efficiency. We as organizations, companies, etc., have responsibility. Okay, we have a corporate responsibility to be more environmentally friendly, to stop the impact on the planet, and Surface aids us in that. It's all recyclable packaging, and the devices themselves are also recyclable. It just makes it a little bit easier to make those orders and know that you're going to be able to dispose of the additional packaging without that big concern of environmental impact.
Hey, Kaylo.
Yeah.
We've got a question in the chat, and it's a really good question. So we've got someone who's asked, in your personal experience, have you seen many of your customers move to remote working? Oh, just got published. Remote working at all times moving forward?
Yes. I've actually seen some larger clients, like large multinationals, remove several floors of their offices because they're just not expecting to have so many people in the office. They've gone to rotational remote working, where they have people in the office only once every second week, or they've gone to complete remote working for certain teams and roles. So yes, 100% have seen it.
And Daniel and Kayla saying the same. Some large law firms are doing the same thing, that they're getting rid of their back office floors in their office buildings and keeping the client-facing areas, but they're pushing their teams to work remotely as well.
Yep.
Yeah, good point, Scott. So yeah, guys, look, it's 100% happening. Like I said, even just for real estate savings, once they realize that productivity didn't drop or maybe even went up with remote working, it just makes total sense to remove some of that office space. And we've seen it happen. We've been doing fit outs for offices and removals for offices for meeting rooms and equipment, etc. So couple of stats here just around product satisfaction, which really matters. And I think the ones that are really important, and people think they're more creative using Surface, they're more collaborative. And they also think that 80% of people think that Surface, let me just move my, here we go. Agree that Surface devices help position their org as a top employer. Okay, so just the fact that you're giving your staff a Surface device, 80% of them think it makes it a better place to work. That's a really telling statistic and one worth paying attention to. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Daniel in just one moment. And what Dan's going to do is he's going to take us through the Surface family. He's going to highlight some of those devices and give you an idea about some of the benefits of Surface and how Surface works. So I'll hand over to you now, Dan, and if you just want to take us through that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Kaylo. Yeah, that was really interesting. And thanks for the question. Great that we've got a question in so early. I really appreciate that. And I can see there's actually a new question in there, so I'm going to let someone else read that. Yeah, guys and gals, everybody, today I'm going to run across the Surface family, but I'm going to focus on some of the new things and some of the really interesting things that Microsoft have been doing recently. We've got our slide here that shows our entire Surface family. I'm lucky enough to have most of these in my home office, including the Surface Go 2, which is essentially your complete mobile workstation. I find these things amazing. The fact that no, that's not even it. Sorry. This one, Surface Go 2, it's tiny, it's LTE advanced, it's still got a high def front-facing camera with Windows Hello, which is really important for your video conferencing. There's some really interesting stuff that Microsoft are doing under the bonnet for video conferencing on the Surface devices. And I'll get across that in a bit, but these things are amazing. You know, you can either deploy 1,000 of these via Autopilot for an entire school, or for a remote worker, it's a complete workstation. And it can also, because it's a 2-in-1, you can also mount it. You can mount this anywhere, and it's a complete workstation running Windows 10 that's incredibly secure and can be autopiloted. So really fantastic little things. You've got your Surface Pro X2. This is your tablet. These things are incredibly sleek and ergonomic. I love these. It's got a battery hour or something like a battery life, something like 14 hours, because they use essentially a mobile architecture. They use mobile chips, so they're really unique in the Surface family. They can't be autopiloted because of that, but they are really that sleek. They are the thinnest of the devices, and they're just incredibly beautiful things if you like using a tablet. What I want to talk about that's new, naturally, sorry, we've got a clamshell all-in-one devices as well. We've got a Surface Laptop 3 and your Surface Laptop Go. Your Surface Laptop 3 obviously can be customized to have something like a Ryzen chip in it. You can really boost the numbers on these, and they're all in one unit, you know, and they're quite hefty. they're premium devices. You know they're a premium device when you open it. And if you don't need something as beefy as a Surface Laptop 3, you can get a Surface Laptop Go, which comes in at a really affordable price point, and you still get, it's still a Surface Laptop device. So incredibly nice machines.
We just got another question in the chat.
Sure.
Just asking if we see the Go 2 as a companion device, or do you see them used as a standalone device as well?
Oh, a standalone device, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Surface Go 2s have enough computing power to do everything that you need. I mean, look, if you're a designer, if you're running some really heavy stuff, you need a dedicated graphics card. That's when you could look at something like a Surface Book or a Surface Studio. But for a Surface Go, I think they're incredible. It's a full workstation. You can use it everywhere because, as well, even though it is very small and very light, you've still got really high quality cameras and mics, so it doesn't come across as a budget machine, you know, on the other side. And the fact that you can just, you know, you can take a Teams call on it, you can use the rear facing camera, you can use the pen, you can mount these in a cab. And just have a touchscreen interface. Yeah, absolutely standalone machines, and you can autopilot them too. So, and that makes a big difference as well with that affordability point. If you've got, you know, 1,000 students who need devices, who need secure devices, or 1,000 remote workers who need incredibly secure devices that can be controlled with that granularity that autopilot and modern Microsoft management gives you, then absolutely, yeah, Surface Go 2s are an option. But good question, thank you. What I want to talk about, I spend a bit more time talking about it, is the new stuff that Microsoft are doing, primarily around the Surface Pro 7 Plus and the Surface Hub 85-inch. Surface Pro 7 Plus is the most recent addition to the Surface family from Microsoft. It stands out for a couple of reasons. One of them being you have an 11th gen chip. They're incredibly powerful machines. I can run all of my studio off these, and then I can pack it up and slide it into my backpack when I go on the road, and that's exactly what I do. I was in Melbourne yesterday giving a training session on a Surface Pro 7 using this camera and this mixer, etc. So it's complete mobility. Along with the beefed up specs, a really unique thing is the ability to remove the SSD. It's got a removable SSD. Using a SIM card pin, I can just pop the back off, and there's my SSD. So this has a lot of implications. One, for data control. This data doesn't leave the building. If something goes wrong with this device, we need to return it using Advanced Exchange. I just pop this SSD out. It never leaves the premises. So this makes, if you've got sensitive data there, if you've got governance issues, if you've got legislation around data on your premises, you can literally keep it in your hand. And these SSDs come as a separate SKU. So if you are using device as a service, let's say you're essentially renting this laptop out, when this device goes back, this SSD doesn't, that is yours. And then it also allows you to do things like you can customize it. You can start with a small SSD, then increase the size as you need and move those SSDs around to really tailor your storage solutions to exactly what you need at the time. So you've got scalability, you've got flexibility. In addition, the Surface Pro 7 Plus has got this fantastic security feature called hyper-virtualization. This feature is available on all Surface devices, but it's not turned on by default because it can be tricky to integrate with some drivers. Surface Pro 7 Plus has taken care of that. It's on by default, and what it means is that there are several virtual machines that run on this device, and those virtual machines handle different parts of the security. So you have a decentralization of the security at a hardware level. Yeah, and it just really boosts the it boosts the security, and it boosts the control that you have over your data in this device. These have got LTE as well. Virtual SIMs, no need to manage an actual physical SIM card. You can just connect them to a network, and you've got data reliably, securely, anytime. Absolute fantastic machines, especially if you are working in an environment where you need to have control over your data and you need to have security. Yeah, just really interesting stuff.
Just a quick question, Dan,
Sure.
from the chat, just asking if it's possible to upgrade the storage on the SSD.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, because you can Yeah, you can mix and match SSDs essentially, and you can upgrade them and downgrade them as you please to really match exactly what you need as those needs change as well. Yeah, separate. The SSDs are separate items, separate SKUs. So you can manage the device with one program like DAS, and then you can manage the SSDs separately to that.
And to extend that question, Dan, we've got another question in the chat about Autopilot. We mentioned a couple of times the CCM. I think we've got that coming up, so we might just address
correct
hybrid management and how you might start looking at Autopilot when we actually come up to the management section for that question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Kayla is going to take you through all of that, but that's a really good question. Really good question. Surface Hub has now been released in the 85. So it's going to be running the same operating system as our Surface Hub 2S, the 50-inch version, or the 55, excuse me. 50.5. Anyway, I do training sessions on these things all day. I love them. They're essentially a boardroom in a box plus a complete collaboration machine. They have that custom OS, Windows 10 Team, which essentially means that end users can't break the device. They can't access anything that they're not supposed to. You can't store anything on the machines. They're cloud devices that are incredibly locked down. You must sign in to access any files on the network. Otherwise, they function as a VC unit, essentially like a public phone booth. You can just call anybody from them on. And anytime the device is powered down or restarts, everything is permanently wiped. Very secure machines, and it's that Windows 10 Team OS that Microsoft have released a massive update for in the last couple of months that makes that possible. A really interesting thing that you can do with Surface Hubs is proximity join, and this is really sort of speaks to how machines, they're also collaborative machines, they're also Windows 10 devices that can be managed completely remotely. And Kayla is going to show you how you can do that with the modern management. But I just wanted to show you how proximity join works on Surface Hub. So I can join a Teams meeting on my device. And if I'm near a Surface Hub with my Bluetooth on, it's automatically going to pick up on my device. It's going to say, hey, there's a Surface Hub near you. Let's take this call on the hub. I don't even need to book the hub for this. I just select the Surface Hub as my room audio. I hit join now, and it's going to call the Surface Hub. Call the Surface Hub. Maybe I need to end the show. There it goes. All right, I just need to end the presentation. And now I can take this call from my device on the Surface Hub. I'm joined in the meeting on this device. My camera and my mic are muted, but I'm taking the AV through the Surface Hub. So it's that easy. I don't need to set anything up on the back end. I literally just join the Teams call. It picks up that the hub's there, and now I'm on the hub and I can present material from this device. And that's just sort of shows how well Surface devices are so well integrated with each other and how easy it is to use something like a Surface Hub. So let's have a look. Alrighty. That's the new stuff that Microsoft are doing with Surface. Now, I want to take a quick moment to talk about Teams and the interesting stuff that's happening with Teams on Surface and how they sort of come together to really sing. Most of the stuff that we're talking about, I'm going to talk about that I find really fascinating is communication. It's communication and how Teams has been designed to make communication feel natural and easy, and how the Surface hardware has also been designed for that. And they complement each other. And this is that point about surfaces being designed around a space, a persona, as opposed to just putting out hardware and finding where it will fit. Naturally, we all know what Teams is. We're here now, chatting on Teams, worldwide, available in 53 markets and 181 different countries, and some millions of regular daily users, all backed up by Microsoft's enterprise security, reliability, etc. Let's talk about the hardware on Surface devices and how this works with Teams. We're going to talk about cameras, mics, speakers, and also the touch interface. Now, I said this before about the Surface Go 2. Most Surface devices have front-facing high-def cameras. Really important now in a time where everything is on video calls that we can see people properly. If you don't, you get zoom fatigue. This is when your eyes can't pick up subtle changes and differences in people's expressions and their body movements, and your brain has to work extra hard to pick up those details so that you can communicate properly. Usually it's a subliminal thing that you don't think about, that you pick up a lot of body language. You need high def cameras for that. Now, so not only are the cameras high def, but they also have filtering. They have AI algorithms that run on the device that when your image comes in through the camera, it does things like adjust the lighting for you automatically. It will pick up the signal to noise. It will adjust your skin tone and the lighting around you to feel more natural, to make your skin tone look softer. And the Surface Laptop 3 can actually be stepped down to F3, so it performs really well in low light conditions, and that's unique to the Surface Laptop 3. The speakers have been designed with a similar mindset. So speakers on Surface devices are located at strategic points to channel sound directly to me, the user, and more importantly, the speakers have been tuned. They have been tuned for the sound of the human voice. So music sounds good on these devices, don't get me wrong, it sounds great, but the speakers are specifically there, designed by Microsoft for video conferencing, so that the voices that I'm hearing outside of my head are warm and natural, and it sounds like people are in the room. The microphones are really interesting too. They're made with MEMS, which is microelectronical mechanical systems. It essentially means the hardware that makes up the microphones is less than a micrometer. Between 0 and 100 micrometers, a tiny engineered, yeah, quite amazing engineering going into the mics. Surface devices have 2 microphones in them, and these mics will triangulate the position of the user, and then they will focus that technology, that signal to noise technology, on the location of the speaker, and then also your voice is filtered once it goes into the mic. So if you're using a Surface, if you've got 2 people on Surfaces, both of them are being filtered on the way in to the microphones, and they're being filtered on the way out on those speakers as well. And it's all designed really just to make communication feel natural and seamless. The noise suppression too on Teams is crazy. I'll show you very quickly how to do it now. Let's do that. So what I'm going to do, let's move that. I can turn noise suppression on high just by clicking my profile picture, hitting settings, and then going devices, and then noise suppression. Everybody, if you haven't done this already, do this, put it on high, and it will cut out things like lawnmowers and coffee grinders. It is incredible the amount of sound that you can cut out using something like that. So I hope you all found that interesting. That's the stuff about Surfaces that I find really interesting, and how it works with Teams and the new stuff Microsoft are bringing out. To talk about managing them in a modern setting remotely, I'm going to throw it over to Kalo, and he can basically take you through things like Autopilot. There's questions that you had about hybrid management, Intune, etc. So over to you, Kay.
Thanks a lot, Dan. So yeah, guys, look, we're going to have a bit of a chat now about this modern cloud management. We did get a question earlier around Autopilot and working in an SCCM environment currently, and then wanting to introduce some Autopilot. That's definitely possible, and I'll address that sort of in context in a moment. So first of all, I just want to set the scene. We talked a bit earlier how much more complex our working environments are, and that's definitely reflected in IT environments and the IT manageability we have. The reasons for that are similar to what I mentioned earlier, but specific to IT. It's about how many different products we have. So we have some old, just good enough products, things like old on-premise Exchange servers, old, application servers that are running, etc. They're still doing their jobs. They're good enough, but they're out of date and they're not managed in the same way. So we've still got some devices that are sitting in servers on our businesses that we need access to or we're using. We have a range of different devices. We have tablets, PCs, laptops, and they've been purchased at different times by different people for different goals. But all of these endpoints require management, and often they require different types of management. So we've got them in different types of management suites, and we have different staff with different skill sets managing them. We have multiple multi-vendor solutions. So things like antivirus solutions that are managed from one place, and then login security solutions that are managed from another place, a range of things like that. And it just means more skills for more staff doing more things, and it becomes more complex, and it also creates more vulnerabilities from a security perspective. Microsoft are looking to address that with Endpoint Manager. Endpoint Manager is a new admin center designed by Microsoft, bringing together some of the more powerful tools they've had for endpoint management and evolving them into a single place for us to manage, observe, and monitor, and look after all our endpoints. So one of the key tools that we talk about here is Intune, which is our device management tool and also handles configuration and application deployment. It works side by side with SCCM to handle full endpoint management. So for those of you already using SCCM, you can create a co-managed solution where you've got Intune handling some of your deployment and management, and you've got SCCM handling some of the things you already expect it to. So you can take advantage of both solutions and you can step yourself into modern management as opposed to having to just dive in straight away. Some of the other key tools we have in there are Autopilot, Azure AD, conditional access, all of these things that we use to secure and manage our devices. And we'll talk a little bit in detail about what each one of those tools do. So something unique to Surface, which has become a really hot topic over the last few months and is really important, is cloud management of firmware. So using DFCI, which is Device Firmware Configuration Interface, a little bit of a mouthful, but you don't need to worry about it. You just need to understand what it does. What DFCI does is it allows us to manage the UEFI or the BIOS on our device remotely from the cloud, which means we can turn things off and control things outside of Windows. So UEFI or BIOS is the software that boots first on a device. It's the firmware level software that runs on the hardware. That boots before Windows boots, and it also controls things at a lower level than Windows. So it controls our microphones, our speakers, our cameras, our Bluetooth, all of those actual hardware functions before Windows does. So we can turn those off and control those at a firmware level using DFCI from the cloud. So we never have to touch a device to manage that firmware. It's very important for security and can help reduce vulnerabilities as well. Cloud-powered manageability. I talked about some of these tools briefly. I want to go into a little bit more detail about what they do. So Azure Active Directory is how we look after our users and devices. It's our identity management. So what that means, I'm just going to slide over a bit again. What that means is essentially we make sure with Azure AD that we have an authorized user from an authorized device getting access to the things they're authorized to see. Identity management means we have a single point where all of our authentication is handled, and we don't need to continually expose usernames and passwords. We don't need to have this stored in multiple servers, and we don't need to enter our password multiple times, which is annoying. We log in once, we use single sign, and we get access to everything. We can also leverage and take advantage of Microsoft's enterprise level stack of security and identity management features, no matter the size of our business. So we can be a small organization of 20 people, and we have the same security and management tools as a 400,000 person multinational megacorp. This is important because it gives us the security and safety and sort of, it allows us to do things we wouldn't be able to do with a single monthly, with a few monthly subscription fees, which is fantastic.
Okay,
yeah, sure.
Sorry to bust in. We've got a question in the chat. Is DFCI only for Surface devices?
Yes, it is. DFCI is a Surface only feature. So a lot of the features we'll talk about today are Windows 10 features and Office 365/M365 features. DFCI is Surface specific though. Good question. So next tool I wanted to talk about was Autopilot. Autopilot's the service we use to connect to and provision new devices or to re-provision existing devices. What it does is Autopilot connects to devices that we've registered through a hardware ID, and Dan's going to take us through the story of how that works in just a moment. That we've registered with a hardware ID, it binds it to Azure AD so that we've got our management and authentication handled, and then it enrolls it in Intune. Now, what does Intune do? Intune handles our device configuration, like I mentioned earlier. It's how we push our applications out to devices. It's how we push our settings, start menu layout, desktop background, whatever our configurations are, Intune handles that. It can work side by side with SCM, or it can work by itself. It depends on your particular environment and how you want to look after things, whether you're a hybrid network or a full cloud network, etc. Intune is probably the most full-featured mobile device management tool on the market, or it's as full-featured as any of the others, and it can handle managing our mobile devices, our Windows endpoints, and any other types of endpoints we have as well. So it's a full-featured service. It lets us push apps, control data, etc., across all those platforms. When we're doing an Autopilot deployment, the enrollment status page is very important because that allows us to tell our users what they're going through and what their end user experience is going to look like, what their computer's doing. And Dan will take us through that story in just a moment, how that works. We also use DFCI as part of our stack. It's a separate service inside Endpoint Manager to do that hardware configuration that we talked about. So as part of a deployment, we're provisioning a new device, we're enrolling it into Azure AD to handle our authentication, make sure we're secure, we're pushing out configurations using Intune and SCCM, and then we're pushing out firmware rules and controls via DFCI. Another part of Endpoint Manager I want to briefly mention is analytics. It's important. It's a single pane of glass, basically, the Endpoint Manager Analytics Center, that allows us to see what's going on. We can see what devices are compliant. We can see what applications are installed, how many are failing, how many are working. We can see where our security issues might be, because we can see what devices are up to date, what potential security issues do we have. We can see what our productivity is like. We can respond to threats in real time because we see them live and we see it through this analytics admin center, through this dashboard. Everyone loves a good dashboard. We like getting that graphical feedback and having that visual representation of what's going on. And the analytics in Endpoint Manager are very powerful. They're simple to set up, and they have some pre-configured features like security scores, etc., that let us see what's happening, how compliant, how happy we should be around our security and around our performance. It's just a great feature. So I'm going to hand back to Daniel just in a moment, who's going to walk us through zero-touch deployment and that autopilot story, what autopilot looks like from an end user perspective. So Dan, I'll hand over to you, and if you just want to take the guys through how this all works.
Absolutely, and good timing, Kay. We just had a question come through in the chat. Said, how would management work if an employee would use a personal device with corporate info?
Look, there's a lot of ways to do that. I don't want to get into too much detail, but it's worth noting that we can control data without having to control the device. So we can completely manage the device and control everything that happens, or we can just manage our corporate data and fence that off, not allowing it outside of our corporate tools and productivity, our corporate apps, and that can be configured quite quickly and easily from inside Endpoint Manager as well. So you don't need to manage your device to manage your corporate data. You can do both things separately or together.
Yep. Yeah, good question and good answer. Yeah, difference between mobile device management and mobile application management, and you can do some interesting stuff. I'm going to take us through what a zero-touch deployment and autopilot deployment actually looks like on the ground. So let's just change my slides so you guys get a better view. Okie dokie. And there we go. All right, so in a traditional deployment, we would make our image, we customize it to what we need, and then we deploy that image to each device physically, right? And we need to do it to each device. If we need to make any changes to this, we have to start again, and we redeploy that image to each device. Not really sustainable, especially if you're scaling up. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Autopilot, we build our image and we push it out to the cloud. That's it. And then it goes up to as many devices that we have at the same time, leaving us to do far more productive things like work on Fallout 4. But let's break it down into actual chunks of what happens. So the first step would be your organization decides to jump on board with Surface devices, and you take the time to match those Surface devices with your employees. You match the personas because they do have individual unique personas, each Surface device, and you can really customize it, especially with the Pro 7 Plus and those SSDs. So you work with Microsoft, or excuse me, Data3 to come up with that solution. Then once you are happy with the devices, the hardware hash, the information that you need for those devices are uploaded directly to your tenant as the devices are leaving. So as they are going out the door, you can your distributor will scan that barcode, and then that information can be put directly into your tenancy. So you never have to open the box, but you already have all of this information that you need to start creating those management profiles. So let's move that. Here we go. So as the Surface device leaves, we scan that information, it gets put into your tenant, and now it's on the way to the user. As it's on the way to the user, you can start creating those different profiles in your autopilot deployment that have unique images. So you can set people up completely differently depending on what they need, what access they need, and where they work. you put that into the cloud, it's ready to go. Now, the Surface device arrives to the user. They get to unbox a brand new device. They sign in, and within an hour, they have a device that is completely customized to them. And it's also completely controlled and monitored by your organization as well. She signs in, ready to go. Let's say that user leaves. From a distance, remotely, you can reset that device. You can completely wipe it, you can get back all that corporate data, and then you can set that device up for someone else. So then you just ship it from one device, one user to the next, and then Rahul signs in and he has a completely different device after an hour because his profile is completely different to Anna's. And this basically repeats for each user that's lucky enough to get their hands on this device. At the end of its life, the Surface is picked up and it is recycled. And more importantly, it is wiped. It is bricked using Autopilot wipe. You can do all of this remotely. And that's it. So in that whole process, it never has to go back to the IT department. It never has to go back for re-imaging or any sort of maintenance. So now Kalo is going to take you through a few different types of Autopilot and what scenarios you'd use them in. Yeah, I'll throw it over to you, Kayla. You are on mute.
Ha, thank you. I knew I'd do it once. It wouldn't be a presentation if someone didn't stay on mute for a moment. So essentially, guys, what we want to do is we want to look at why Surface is better for Autopilot. And so I want to talk about a couple of key points here. The first one being that Surface is designed for Autopilot. So I talked earlier about how from the ground up, Microsoft build these devices with M365 and the cloud management tools in mind. Surface is a perfect example of that, especially in the Autopilot scenario. Surface ships with the Microsoft signature image or the Surface for Business image. That Surface for Business image has almost zero bloatware. The only thing that some people don't like is, say, the Xbox game bar, which is quick to remove. Everything else is ready for business. You've got your Office 365 apps installed. You've got OneDrive set up. You've got Defender ready to go. So there's very little configuration to be done, which means during the scenario that Dan just explained, we have a very quick end user experience. We can also look after firmware via DFCI, as we've mentioned a couple of times. This means we're more secure and we can cloud deploy things without IT ever having to touch them. It's easier to get Surface devices into Autopilot because your distributors and your resellers are set up to do that for you. What that means as well is there's no additional fees, etc. You can get it done as part of your initial deal. You can get your Autopilot devices in there and get ready to push out those configurations. Another nice little quality of life feature is if there is a return, Microsoft will remove that Surface ID from your tenant, and before you even receive the new ID, the new device, the ID will be uploaded into your tenant ready for deployment. So you don't need to have that little bit of extra work to get it ready to roll after a replacement's done. I want to have a quick look at some key data points here that I think really do matter. So users like using Surface devices. Okay, we have a lot of data around that. 57% believe they're more productive using Surfaces and 55% believe they're more creative. I think the one that really tells here though, and the one that we want to talk about is this 78%. So 8 out of 10 IT managers say they have reduced IT time and labor configuring and deploying Surface devices. It saves time, it saves money just purchasing a Surface because it's easier to deploy and configure them. This results in real cost savings, okay? So those 3-year cost savings are huge, and there's a lot of data to back these up. You can check them out through some Gartner studies and Forrester studies that are out. This stat here, though, is the one that I want to talk about momentarily. 75% of users, 75%, oh, sorry, not 75% users, 75% reduction in help desk calls, okay? This is across the board when you use Surface devices. That's crazy. Imagine if you could walk into your IT team and say, guys, I'm going to reduce our help desk costs by 75%. That's essentially what you're looking to do just by purchasing Surface. The reason for this is heavily based around Windows Hello and biometric login. People don't need password resets anymore. This means that we save time and we can get our help desk staff working on real problems rather than these basic password reset issues. People just need to look at the device and they're logged in. It also means we have a reduction in security breaches because we can't have any password security breaches any longer. We've got biometric login. It just means we're more secure, we're more safe, and we're spending time doing the jobs we should be doing rather than busy work. I wanted to quickly touch on the licensing required for Windows Autopilot and doing a deployment like this. We need a P1 Azure Active Directory license, a premium AD license, which most of us would have as part of our packaging, and we need an MDM license. Intune is the preferred MDM and will come included with most of your Microsoft licensing deals. You can talk to Data3 about that and about how your licensing can get organized, but just know that you can use another MDM. Intune is the preferred one, but those are the only licenses you need to work with modern management and do Autopilot deployments. Security. We had a question before around, is there a best practice for Windows security, which is great, and there is. But what I want to talk about is how security works and why Surface are a more secure device overall, at least initially. So look, I want to talk about layers here and about how everything's built from the ground up, and that's what I guess the Surface differentiator really is. So Microsoft from the beginning are security focused. Everything is designed and built with security in mind. It's tested that way. From the factory level, we have security protocols and inspection before it's ever even put into the device. Once the device is put together and ready to send out, we enable advanced Windows security is enabled at the factory level, and that includes some of those virtualization pieces that Dan mentioned. We have full remote device management. So we've got control of this device as soon as it's turned on and connected to the internet. We bind it to Azure AD. We can turn on MFA. We can turn on all these different authentication options, and we can make sure that no one can access that device unless they should. These layers mean we have a secure PC, but let's dig into this a little bit deeper. Hardware security. We have TPM chips. This is a chip that holds part of an encryption key. We have BitLocker. The encryption key is used to unlock BitLocker. BitLocker is how we encrypt our hard drives, okay? So part of our encryption key is on that TPM chip, part of that encryption key is up in the cloud. You need access to both parts of that encryption key to unlock that hard drive, which means even if the device is stolen, they're not going to be able to get access to it unless they have access to the cloud part of the key as well. Just means we're more secure, makes it safer. We have Windows Hello, which means our biometric facial logins or fingerprint logins are stored on a discrete chip on the device as well, so we don't expose that to the cloud. But once we authenticate to the device chip, it talks to Azure AD, and that authenticates us to all our cloud material. We only need to sign in once with our face and we get access in a very convenient way to all of our servers and applications and data. We have firmware security. Okay, so as we've spoken about several times, DFCI allows us to manage the UEFI on the device, or we can use SEM, which is a USB-based authentication system that lets us manage the firmware on Surface devices as well. So we've got hardware security, firmware security. We've got operating system security. This is really important, okay? We've got secure boot enabled by default. So if there's something wrong when we hit UEFI, it won't boot into Windows. It'll control our boot so that we don't expose ourselves to more vulnerabilities. Some of the other operating system security, that virtualization that Dan talked about, where we fence off parts of our operating system so the data doesn't interact and it's secure, even if we have a security breach and part of Windows is compromised, other parts of it are still fenced off in virtual machines and they're not available. Cloud security, so Windows Update for Business. We make sure our devices are always up to date, they're patched, and any security breaches that are found are patched immediately. Windows Defender, advanced threat protection, conditional access. We've got a huge amount of cloud-based security. Conditional access means we control where people access our data from what device and under what conditions. It's very important. So you see we've got hardware security, firmware security, operating system security, and cloud security. All these layers together just mean that Surfaces are the most protected devices possible, and that we don't need to worry so much about our security and security procedures if we follow the best practice, which generally is to use Microsoft-based security to keep your devices up to date and to set up advanced threat protection so that you're aware of things that are happening and can respond to them in real time using analytics and awareness, making sure devices are compliant, etc. Real-world results of all this security. 20% reduction in security breaches for Surface users, 17% reduction in endpoint security spend, and a 14% reduction in mobile device management spend. It's real world stuff. We should be aware of it. There are a number of security breaches in Australia every month. A good month it's 3,000 in IT security breaches. A bad month it's 5,000 plus. That's a lot of security breaches. We should be aware of it. If you want to learn more about security, we're going to put some Data3 videos into the chat at the end of this presentation that take a deep dive on security. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the security of the Surface Pro 7 Plus and a bit of a review of the Pro 7 Plus as well. So there'll be a couple of videos in there. Anyone that wants to deep dive into more info here, feel free to do so. So I'd like to open the floor up for more Q&A. We've had great questions, but we'd love to hear more. So if you do have any more questions, let me know, and we'll be happy to address those over the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes. I'll hand back to Scott briefly, though, as I know he wants to do a little bit of a wrap up and just talk a little bit about Data3's role here again and let us know how things go. So I'll hand back to Scott. Any questions, throw them in the chat. Dan and I here are ready to answer. But thanks for your time today, guys.
Thanks again, Daniel and Kalo, for that content. A couple of points came out of that. The combination of the Surface device when you integrate it with the M365 security stack and the modern management with Intune and Autopilot really lights the device experience up. And you know, Microsoft is doing a lot of work to innovate in the Surface category of devices, but there's also a lot of innovation working from that chip to cloud security, you know, from the UEFI all the way up to the cloud. There is a video we'll put in the we'll post in the chat, which is a video we shot around. It's called 7 Minutes of Security, and we talk about chip to cloud security in that video. So we'll put that in the chat and excuse me, encourage you to look at that as well. So I think with that, you know, obviously Data3 is standing by ready to assist you if you've got any further queries about any of what we covered today, from either device, the software, your licensing, all solutions to deploy those technologies. But with that, we can open up to any further questions or wrap if there's no further questions. So I'll have a look at the chat there and monitor that for a couple of minutes and see if there's anything else. I don't think, gents, have you seen anything else pop up in there that we haven't caught yet?
Not yet, Scott.
So,
no.
Scott, we've had a lot of questions through the presentation.
We have, yeah.
We've had a great little run of questions. Those videos are getting put into the chat now, guys, for anyone who wants to check them out. But I really appreciate the feedback and the activity level. Yeah,
it's been great. Okay, so with that, I suppose what we're going to do is we'll probably put a wrap there. Again, just feel free to reach out to any of the Data3 team if you've got any further questions about anything we've covered there today. But with that, I think what we'll do.
Got one question in there, Scott. Yep. I'm just asking if Data3 does any DAS services or have a DAS offering.
Yeah, we do. We do have a DAS offering, so we can actually combine software licensing with the device with our professional services to deploy things like modern management solutions, and we can do that on a per user per month basis. So we're able to absolutely provide a DAS offering with a management layer wrapped around that for a full managed service as well. So again, if you've got any questions about our DAS offering, please feel free to reach out and ask us any questions there as well. So with that, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to wrap it there. So thanks again to the team for your support for moderating this session. And with that, I think we'll call it a close.
Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it.
We just got a question, guys.
Before we
knock it on the head. The last one, just beat us to the bell. Does DAS include Surface Hubs? Can we DAS a Surface Hub?
Yes, there's well, it's called Surface Hub as a Service, or its code name was Shaz. So Surface Hub there is a Surface Hub as a Service to complement the device as a service offering as well. So there is a DAS and Surface Hub option as well, and that includes things like the integration to commission the hub, some adoption services with our partners, Collab Tech, and then also the some of the accessories like pens, etc., and stand options as well. So there is a Surface Hub as a service option as well. So thanks for your time.